half steps review. Here we are talking about half steps again. So you can look at this picture. On the piano, we have the spaces between two keys. We call them half steps when they're the closest key. So you can see between, let's say, this note and that note, between C and D, C sharp or D flat, right here, that black key, you're going to have a space of a half step. We call it a half step. The closest keys you can get, it's a half step on the piano. So let's just look at the piano and see where our half steps in real, playing. So we have C, and then you would go up here. That's called, you can call it C sharp, or you can call it a D flat. It depends what you want to do. But the space between these two notes, it's a half step, okay? So what would be a half step up from this note? Well, look which key is the closest. If you go up, right, again, so you would have to go this way. So it's kind of like a zigzag. You see you have white key, black key, white key. Next half step would go here, and then go here. But look what happens between E and F. There's no black key between E and F. So the half step will be actually that. Okay? We still call it a half step right here. Between E and F, it's a half step. So that's one spot you need to be careful about. Most of the other notes, they have black keys in between. Here we don't have, so that's actually directly a half step happens here. So a half step from F would be here. That's the pattern of half steps when you're going up. And then what happens between B and C? Again, there is no black key, so between B and C, it is a half step already. So you don't need a black key. So between B and C, it's a half step, and E and F, it's a half step. The rest of the notes, half steps, you would go to the black keys like that, like a zigzag motion. So if you listen to this pattern, we call it actually chromatic pattern. Okay. Now if you go backwards, just do the same. So now you'll have to recognize these half steps in your theory book on page 20. So let's look at the first one. The first one, you always have to read the instructions first. So complete the half step challenge for each puppet. So the first puppet, see right here, he's holding something up in his hand. So let's read what he's asking. What is a half step up from E? Okay, so it will change. Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down, but it's still a half step. So make sure you remember that. Okay, so we have to write the answer here. What note would be a half step up from E? Well, let's look at our piano. It's really helpful. So let's find our E note. Here's one of our E's, right? Doesn't matter which E. You can do it here, you can do it up here. It doesn't matter. They're asking about E, any E. So you find the E and then think, what would be a half step up? Half step, it means the closest key, okay? So, well, look what happens. It goes into here. We just talked about it, remember? Between E and F, there's no black key. So the answer will be F. The half step up from E will be F note. So let's mark it. Oh, I made a copy here so I can reuse that same book over and over. So the answer here would be F. Okay? All right, well, let's move on to the next puppet. So here, I'm going to move here. This guy is holding another sign, another task for us to do. So let's read it. Draw a whole note, a half step lower. It's going to be lower. It's going to go the other way. It's going to be going to the left, right? So a half step lower. Do you need a sharp or flat? Okay, well, let's look. So we have that note. We have a treble clef. So the treble clef, that means that's a G note. All right? So this time we actually have to draw the note. Here we just needed to write the letter of the note, the name. Here we actually have to draw the note. But before we draw the note, let's figure out what note it is we need to draw. So let's find the G note. That's a G. Now we have to go half step down or lower from that note. So which note would we play? Well, this this note, right? That's the closest key. So now, how do we draw it? Well, let's say it's going to be, I don't know, maybe we'll call it, remember I told you this note can be called G flat or F sharp. So, and it's up to you which one you want to pick. Well, I just decide maybe, I'm going to use the F note. Okay, I'm going to use the F note. So I'm going to draw the F, and it's a whole note. And then I say it's going to be a sharp. Okay, so the answer would be F sharp. Now, if you don't like the F sharp, you can go ahead and say, well, let me erase this one. Okay, if you don't want the F sharp, it would not be a mistake. You just draw the G, and then you would have to make it a G flat. So it's the same note. It's called enharmonics, when you have the same key and you name it two different ways, two or more different ways. Okay, well, let's do the last one, and then the rest you'll have to do by yourself, okay? So this one, it's called, the sign that this puppet is holding in his hands is this. Circle the half steps. There are 3. So you have these different examples, 5 of them, and you'll have to find the half steps, okay? So let's look at here. So we have this note and that note. So we have A and B, right? So let's play it. A and we have B. Is this a half step? No, why? Because there's a black key in here. The half step would go here. So between A and B, it's actually a whole step, We're going to study it later. Okay, so just so I wouldn't forget, I'm just going to cross it out. So I'm not going to go back here. Okay, let's go on and let's do this one, okay? The down one. So it's an E and that's an F. Let's play it. Look at your piano. This is E and this is F. Is this a half step? Yes, it is, because there's no black key and we don't need it because this is a half step already. We talked about it already. Okay, so I'm going to circle this one. That's a half step. So I need 3 of them to find. So I found 1, I need 2 more. Okay, let's move on to this note. So this note is G. It's a bass clef, right? So be careful. G and F. So let's play them. So since it's bass clef, I'm going to use my left hand. So G, and then there's an F. Is this a half step? No, that's not the closest you can get, right? So you would need to go here to make it a half step. So that's a whole step. So I'm just going to do the same thing what I did with the first one. I'm going to cross it out so I don't forget. And then we'll move on to this one. Again, it's a bass clef, and that's a middle C note. I can write them down if I forget. We have C, and this is B. Okay, let's play, and let's see. C and B. Okay, look. There's no black key. It doesn't matter, there are white keys here, right? So that's a half step between C and B. Okay, so I'm going to circle that here, okay? So I found the second one. Well, if there's 3 and only 1 left, I can probably guess it could be the half step, but I still will double check. So let's just say it's an E note in the treble clef, and this is E flat. Maybe you already guessed. So let's play that. E and E flat. And indeed, it's a half step. So I did find 3 half steps in this task. That was a little bit tricky, but we did it. So see if you can continue like that. Just read the instructions, what this little puppet is holding in his hands. Read the instructions carefully. See if you understand it, and don't be scared. Try it. Okay? Happy practicing.